The letter arrived on a Tuesday, tattered and yellowed, smelling faintly of lavender and old paper, as if it had been hiding in a drawer for decades. Eli Carter, 25, stood frozen in his cramped Seattle apartment, the words scrawled in his grandmother's unmistakable cursive slicing through the haze of his morning coffee. My dearest Eli, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But I've left you something to make things right. Eli's heart thundered. He hadn't seen Grandma Ruth in 3 years, not since the family reunion in Boise where his father, Pastor Daniel Carter, had publicly denounced him for being gay. The memory still stung. The crowded church hall, the weight of 100 eyes, his father's voice booming, "No son of mine will live in sin." Eli had fled that night, his suitcase barely packed, his mother's tearful silence louder than any sermon. Only Grandma Ruth had followed him to the bus station, pressing a crumpled 20 into his hand and whispering, "You're enough, Eli, always." Now her letter promised something more, a key to a safe deposit box in a small Idaho bank, with instructions to retrieve its contents alone. Seattle's drizzle pattered against the window as Eli reread the letter, his fingers trembling. He was a barista now, scraping by, his dreams of art school buried under bills and rejection. The idea of returning to Idaho, to the town that had shunned him, felt like walking into a lion's den. But Grandma Ruth's words burned. Make things right. What did she mean? Against his better judgment, curiosity, and a flicker of hope won out. He booked a bus ticket for the next morning. The 12-hour ride to Twin Falls was a blur of gray highways and restless thoughts. Eli's seatmate, a quiet man named Marcus, 32, caught his eye early on. Marcus had a gentle smile, a neatly trimmed beard, and glasses that slipped down his nose as he read a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. They struck up a conversation somewhere near the Oregon border. First about books, then music, then the small, jagged pieces of their lives. Marcus was a librarian, recently divorced, heading to Twin Falls to start fresh after his own family's rejection for coming out as bisexual. Funny how people who claim to love you can make you feel so small, Marcus said, his voice soft but heavy. Eli nodded, the shared pain knitting an unspoken bond. By the time the bus rolled into Twin Falls, the two had exchanged numbers, and Marcus's parting smile lingered in Eli's chest like a spark. But the warmth faded as Eli stepped into the town he'd sworn never to revisit. Twin Falls was unchanged. The same dusty main street, the same church steeple looming like a judgmental giant. He checked into a cheap motel, avoiding the eyes of locals who might recognize him, and lay awake, the letter's promise gnawing at him. The next morning, Eli stood before First Idaho Bank, the key from Grandma Ruth's letter clutched in his sweaty palm. The safe deposit box was small, its contents deceptively simple. A stack of legal documents, a velvet pouch, and another letter. The documents were a will, Grandma Ruth's will, naming Eli as her sole beneficiary. The pouch held a single gold locket, engraved with "Forever Free." The letter, though, was a bombshell. Eli, it read, "I've left you everything. My house, my savings, my land. Your father will fight this, but it's ironclad. Use it to live your truth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you sooner." Eli's knees buckled. Grandma Ruth had been wealthy, quietly so, her frugal life masking a fortune amassed from decades of savvy investments. The will detailed assets worth over $1 million, land, a trust fund, a house in the hills. Eli's father had expected to inherit it all, to fund his church's expansion. Instead, Ruth had chosen Eli, the outcast. The revelation was dizzying, but so was the danger. If his father found out, Eli knew the fallout would be explosive. He left the bank in a daze, the documents hidden in his backpack. At a nearby park, he sat on a bench trying to process it all. That's when Marcus appeared, as if fate had nudged him there. "You look like you just saw a ghost," Marcus said, sitting beside him. Eli hesitated, then spilled everything: the letter, the will, the betrayal of his family. Marcus listened, his hand brushing Eli's in quiet solidarity. "You don't have to face this alone," he said. And in that moment, under the golden glow of dusk, Eli felt something he hadn't in years: hope. But hope was fragile in Twin Falls. That night, Eli's phone buzzed with a voicemail from his father. "I know you're here, Eli. We need to talk." The pastor's voice was cold, laced with fury. Eli's stomach churned. He didn't know how his father had found out, but one thing was clear: the fight for Grandma Ruth's legacy was just beginning. Eli woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside his motel window. It was barely dawn, the sky a bruised purple over Twin Falls. His father's voicemail replayed in his mind, each word a splinter. "We need to talk." He hadn't responded, hadn't slept much either. The documents from Grandma Ruth's safe deposit box lay spread across the motel bed, their weight both a shield and a target. $1 million. A house, land, all his if he could survive the storm coming. He met Marcus for coffee at a diner on the edge of town, a place where the locals didn't know his face. Marcus's presence was a balm, his steady gaze grounding Eli as he recounted the voicemail. "He's not going to let this go," Eli said, stirring his coffee until it swirled like his thoughts. "My father thinks that money is his divine right." Marcus leaned forward, his voice low. "Then you need a plan. Have you talked to a lawyer?" Eli hadn't, but the idea sparked urgency. He couldn't just hide, he had to fight. The lawyer's office was a small, cluttered space above a hardware store. Sarah Nguyen, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, listened as Eli explained the will, her fingers tapping the desk. "Your grandmother's lawyer was thorough," Sarah said, scanning the documents. "This is airtight, but your father's a pastor with influence. He'll try to contest it, maybe claim undue influence or mental incapacity." She paused, her eyes softening. "And he'll use your personal life against you. Are you ready for that?" Eli's jaw tightened. He'd been ready for that fight since the day he left home. Sarah agreed to represent him, but warned it wouldn't be easy. "Your father's already called the bank," she said, her tone grim. "He's sniffing around." Eli's blood ran cold. How had Pastor Daniel known? Had someone at the bank tipped him off? The betrayal felt like a fresh wound, but Sarah's confidence steadied him. "We'll file to probate the will tomorrow," she said. "Stay low until then." Eli tried to follow her advice, but Twin Falls was a small town, and secrets traveled fast. By noon, whispers followed him at the grocery store, old church friends avoiding his gaze. He felt like a ghost, haunting a place that had already buried him. Desperate for air, he wandered to the park again, where Marcus found him, this time with a thermos of tea and a quiet smile. "You're carrying a lot," Marcus said, sitting close. Their shoulders brushed, and Eli let himself lean into the warmth. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. Marcus's hand found his, a silent promise. "You're not alone, Eli." That evening, the confrontation came. Eli was at the motel when a knock rattled the door. His father stood there, tall and imposing in his black coat, his face a mask of righteous anger. "You think you can steal what's mine?" Daniel spat, stepping inside without invitation. Eli's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "Grandma left it to me. It's her will, not yours." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You're an abomination, Eli. You don't deserve a cent." The words cut, but Eli saw the desperation beneath them. His father wasn't just angry, he was scared. The argument escalated, Daniel's voice rising until the motel manager pounded on the wall. "The church needs that money," Daniel hissed. "You'll ruin everything." Eli clutched the locket from Grandma Ruth, its weight anchoring him. "She wanted me to live my truth," he said, his voice steady. "Not yours." Daniel stormed out, but not before vowing to fight the will in court. Eli sank onto the bed, adrenaline fading into exhaustion. His phone buzzed, Marcus, checking in. "You okay?" The text read. Eli typed back, "Not yet, but I will be." The next day, Sarah filed the probate papers, but the town was already buzzing. Daniel had rallied his congregation, painting Eli as a greedy sinner stealing from the church. At a local cafe, Eli overheard two women whispering about the pastor's disgraceful son. The shame was familiar, but this time it fueled him. He wasn't the scared kid who'd fled 3 years ago. Grandma Ruth had given him a weapon, and he'd use it. Marcus met him that evening, bringing takeout and a plan. "You need allies," he said, spreading napkins like a battle map. "People who knew your grandmother, who can vouch for her intentions." Eli thought of Ruth's old friends, a tight-knit group of widows who'd loved her fiercely. Maybe they could help. As they talked, Marcus's hand rested on Eli's, and the air between them shifted. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world's weight lifted. Eli leaned in, their lips brushing in a kiss that felt like defiance, like freedom. But the fight was far from over. That night, Eli found a note slipped under his door. "Leave town, or you'll regret it." The handwriting wasn't his father's, but the threat carried his shadow. Eli's resolve hardened. Grandma Ruth's gift wasn't just money. It was a chance to rewrite his story, and he wouldn't let anyone take that away. The note lay on the motel floor, its words seared into Eli's mind. "Leave town, or you'll regret it." He hadn't slept, the threat looping through his thoughts like a bad song. By morning, Twin Falls felt smaller, its streets closing in like a trap. But Eli wasn't running, not this time. Grandma Ruth's will was his armor, and Marcus's quiet strength was his shield. He tucked the note into his pocket, evidence for Sarah, and headed to meet her. Sarah's office was a hive of activity, papers strewn across her desk. "Your father's moving fast," she said, not looking up. "He's filed a petition to contest the will, claiming Ruth wasn't of sound mind." Eli's stomach dropped. "That's a lie," he said. Sarah nodded. "Of course it is, but he's got half the town believing it. We need witnesses who knew her best." Eli thought of Ruth's friends, Doris, Clara, and June, the widows who'd shared her weekly bridge games. If anyone could defend her memory, it was them. Finding them wasn't easy. Doris, a spry 78-year-old with a sharp tongue, lived in a clapboard house on the edge of town. She welcomed Eli with a hug and a plate of cookies, her eyes twinkling. "Ruth always said you were her favorite," Doris told him. "She knew what your father did to you, and it broke her heart." Clara and June echoed her, their stories painting a picture of Ruth's fierce love for Eli. "She rewrote that will after the reunion," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Said you deserved to live free." Their words were a lifeline, but Eli knew his father's influence ran deep. Would their testimony be enough? Marcus joined him that afternoon, his calm presence easing the knot in Eli's chest. They walked through Shoshone Falls Park, the roar of the waterfall drowning out the town's whispers. "You're doing this for her," Marcus said, his hand brushing Eli's. "And for you." Eli nodded, but the note's threat lingered. He showed it to Marcus, who frowned. This isn't just your father. Someone else is scared of you staying. They decided to take it to Sarah, who promised to investigate. Could be a church member, she said. Daniel's got loyalists who'd do anything for him. The next day, Eli visited Grandma Ruth's house, a modest ranch-style home in the hills. It was his now, according to the will, but stepping inside felt like trespassing. The air smelled of her lavender and lemon polish. Photos lined the walls. Eli as a boy, grinning with paint on his hands. Ruth at his high school art show, beaming. He found a journal in her bedroom, its pages filled with her thoughts. One entry, dated a year ago, read, "Eli's stronger than he knows. I pray he'll forgive me for staying silent too long." Tears stung Eli's eyes. She'd seen him even when he felt invisible. But the peace didn't last. That evening, as Eli locked the house, a truck slowed on the road. A man he vaguely recognized, Tom, a deacon from his father's church, leaned out. "You're not welcome here, Carter," he growled. "Take your money and go." Eli's pulse raced, but he stood tall. "This is my home now," he said. Tom sped off, but the encounter left Eli shaken. He called Marcus, who arrived within minutes, his face set with worry. "You can't stay here alone," Marcus said. Eli agreed to crash at Marcus's rented apartment, a small space filled with books and warmth. Over dinner, they talked strategy. Marcus suggested a public gesture, something to show the town Eli wasn't hiding. "Host a memorial for Ruth," he said. "Invite everyone. Let them see who you are." The idea was bold, risky even, but Eli felt its power. Ruth's memory could be his weapon, a way to reclaim his place. They planned it for the weekend, at the community center, with Doris, Clara, and June spreading the word. The memorial took shape, but so did the opposition. Eli's father held a rival event at the church, a prayer vigil for Ruth's soul, thinly veiled as a protest against Eli. Flyers appeared around town, calling the will a miscarriage of justice. Eli's resolve wavered, but Marcus was there, steady as ever. Their late-night talks turned intimate, their kisses a quiet rebellion against the town's hate. Each touch felt like a promise. They'd face this together. On the eve of the memorial, Eli found another note under his door. "You won't win." This time, the handwriting matched the first. Someone was watching, waiting. Eli's fear spiked, but so did his anger. Grandma Ruth had given him this chance, and he'd fight for it. For her, for himself, and for the man who was starting to mean everything. The community center buzzed with tension, its folding chairs filled with faces Eli hadn't seen in years. The memorial for Grandma Ruth was his stand, a declaration that he wouldn't be erased. At 25, Eli stood at the podium, his hands trembling but his voice steady. As he spoke of Ruth's love, her laughter, her quiet strength. Doris, Clara, and June sat in the front row, their presence a shield against the skeptical stares. Marcus stood by the door, his eyes never leaving Eli, a silent anchor in the storm. Half the town had shown up, drawn by curiosity or loyalty to Ruth. But Eli felt the undercurrent of his father's influence. Church members whispering, their eyes cold. He'd invited Pastor Daniel, a calculated risk, but the empty seat reserved for him spoke volumes. As Eli shared stories of Ruth's kindness, a heckler shouted, "You're just after her money." The room stilled. Eli's heart pounded, but he met the man's gaze. "I'm here for her memory," he said. "She wanted me to live free. That's what I'm doing." Doris clapped first, then Clara, and soon half the room joined in. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. Afterward, Marcus pulled him aside, his hand warm on Eli's shoulder. "You were incredible," he said, his voice thick with pride. They lingered in the empty parking lot, the stars bright above Twin Falls. Eli kissed him, the act defiant in its tenderness, but the moment was shattered by headlights. Tom, the deacon, stepped out of his truck, his face twisted. "You're a disgrace," he spat. Marcus stepped forward, but Eli held him back. "This is my fight," he whispered. To Tom, he said, "Ruth chose me. Deal with it." Tom hesitated, then drove off, his tires screeching. Sarah called the next morning with news. The court date was set for next week. Daniel's petition claimed Ruth had been coerced, a lie that infuriated Eli but wasn't unexpected. Sarah had lined up Doris, Clara, and June as witnesses, along with Ruth's doctor, who'd confirm her mental clarity. But Daniel had his own arsenal: church elders, forged letters, even a psychologist willing to question Ruth's sanity. "It's a smear campaign," Sarah said. "They'll drag your personal life into it." Eli was ready. He'd spent years surviving their judgment. Now he'd turn it against them. He and Marcus spent the weekend preparing, combing through Ruth's journal for evidence of her intentions. One entry stopped Eli cold. "Daniel's hate blinds him. I pray Eli finds someone who sees his light." He showed it to Marcus, his throat tight. "She'd have loved you," Eli said. Marcus smiled, pulling him close. "She already does through you." Their connection deepened, each moment a rebellion against the town's suffocating judgment. But the notes kept coming. Another slipped under Marcus's apartment door. "You're next." Eli's fear morphed into resolve. Whoever was behind this was scared, and that meant he was winning. The day before the hearing, Eli visited Ruth's house again, needing her strength. He found a hidden drawer in her desk, stuffed with letters she'd never sent. Letters to him, written after he'd left Twin Falls. "You're my heart, Eli," one read. "Don't let them break you." Tucked among them was a photo of Ruth at a pride parade in Boise, holding a sign, "Love is love." Eli's eyes burned. She'd known even then, and she'd fought for him in her quiet way. The hearing was a circus. Daniel took the stand, his voice booming with righteous fury, painting Eli as a prodigal son who'd manipulated Ruth. Eli's hands clenched, but Sarah's steady presence kept him grounded. Doris testified next, her voice unwavering as she described Ruth's love for Eli. "She rewrote her will to protect him," Doris said. "Because you failed him, Daniel." The courtroom gasped. Clara and June echoed her, their stories dismantling Daniel's lies. Ruth's doctor sealed it, confirming her clarity until her final days. Eli took the stand last, the locket in his pocket a talisman. He spoke of Ruth's belief in him, her secret support, the letters she'd never sent. "She gave me a chance to be myself," he said, his voice breaking. "Something this town never did." The judge's face was unreadable, but Eli felt lighter. He'd told his truth. That night, Marcus cooked dinner, the small apartment filled with the scent of garlic and hope. They toasted to Ruth, to courage, to them. But as they laughed, a brick crashed through the window, a note tied to it, "Last warning." Eli's blood ran cold. The fight wasn't over, but he was ready. For Ruth, for Marcus, for himself. The brick lay among shattered glass, the note's words stark, "Last warning." Eli's hands shook as he handed it to Marcus, who called the police while Eli swept up the debris. The Twin Falls sheriff arrived, a gruff man named Hollis who'd known Ruth. He took the note, promising to investigate, but his eyes lingered on Eli and Marcus with a hint of suspicion. "This town doesn't take kindly to trouble," Hollis said. Eli bit back a retort. Trouble had found him, not the other way around. Sarah was furious when she heard. "This is intimidation," she said, adding the note to their evidence. "It strengthens our case." But Eli felt the walls closing in. The hearing had exposed his father's desperation, and someone, maybe Tom, maybe another church loyalist, was escalating. Marcus suggested they leave town until the ruling, but Eli refused. "I'm done running," he said. Marcus nodded, his hand squeezing Eli's. "Then we face it together." The judge's ruling came a week later, the courtroom packed with Daniel's supporters and a few of Ruth's friends. Eli sat beside Sarah, Marcus in the row behind, his presence a steady pulse. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, read her decision. "Ruth Carter's will is valid. No evidence supports claims of coercion or incapacity." Eli exhaled, relief flooding him. The house, the money, the land, it was his. Daniel's face crumpled, his allies murmuring in shock. Doris hugged Eli, whispering, she'd be proud. But victory came with a cost. As Eli left the courthouse, Daniel cornered him. "You've torn this family apart," he said, his voice low and venomous. Eli met his gaze. "You did that when you shamed me." For the first time, he saw his father falter, a crack in his armor. Daniel walked away, the crowd parting like a sea. Eli moved into Ruth's house, its quiet warmth a refuge. He and Marcus spent evenings there, painting walls and dreaming of a future. Eli wanted to turn the house into an art studio, a place for kids like him, outcasts with big dreams. Marcus suggested a community library too, a haven for stories like theirs. Their plans grew, rooted in love and defiance. The threats stopped, but the mystery of the notes lingered. Hollis called one morning with news. Tom had confessed, pressured by Daniel to scare Eli off. The sheriff had no proof against Daniel, but Tom faced charges. It wasn't full justice, but it was enough. Eli felt the town shift, some faces softening when he passed. Not everyone, but enough. Months later, Eli stood in the park with Marcus, the same bench where they'd first connected. The sun set, painting the sky gold, and Eli pulled out Ruth's locket, opening it to reveal a tiny photo of her smiling. "She gave me more than money," he said. "She gave me courage." Marcus kissed him, their hands entwined, the world fading to just them. Eli's art studio opened that spring, its walls lined with his paintings, bold, vibrant, unapologetic. The first class was full, kids from all corners of Twin Falls, some with their own secrets, their own fights. Marcus's library corner hummed with readers, a quiet rebellion in a town learning to change. Ruth's legacy wasn't just cash. It was a spark, igniting Eli's life and beyond. One evening, Eli found a letter in Ruth's journal, tucked in the back. "Eli," it read, "love is your strength. Build a life that shines." He did, with Marcus by his side, in a house filled with her spirit. The town might never fully accept him, but Eli had found his place, not in their approval, but in his truth. And that was revenge enough.